my wife began having affairs with her subordinates after being promoted to a high position in her company. It's not just a personal betrayal but also an irony to our shared struggle and professional success. Welcome to the Love and Betrayed Love channel. If you enjoy this story, don't forget to subscribe and give it a thumbs up. I'm 45 and male. I have been married. I've been with my 42-year-old female wife for about 18 years. She works in marketing for a well-known corporation's regional branch, and I am a senior at a software company. We've both been relatively career-focused go-getters, which I believe is part of what pulled us together. You're probably not surprised to learn that we don't have any children, but we've never felt like we belonged, and I don't believe anyone should take the decision to have children lightly in a marriage as long as ours. We've never had an issue with unfaithfulness, which I've always appreciated. I've always felt that we were too busy climbing the ladder to play around. That is most certainly an incorrect assumption, because I know that anyone who wants to cheat can make time for it if they truly want to, but there was absolutely no cause for me to suspect her of cheating, and I utilized that idea to support it. The saddest aspect is that I had no idea anything was wrong until it happened. There were no indications as far as I know. Maybe if I had paid more attention I might have noticed it, but I am getting ahead of myself. The whole issue started when my wife was promoted at work around a year ago. She works incredibly hard and has been with her current company for almost a decade. She returned one day to inform me that she had received a significant promotion and was now in an executive position with the company. That was huge because, as I've previously stated, we've always been very career-focused and there were indications that she would be chosen for the promotion, but we weren't certain, so it was enormous when the post was confirmed. It came with new responsibilities, but it also came with a significant pay raise, which was, of course, one of the finest elements of the deal. Almost little has changed. She was maintaining slightly later evenings, however, nothing too weird. And if you're a top marketing executive at a company, it's not uncommon that your hours will be longer, at least in the beginning, while you adjust to your new work. She'd get back early on occasion, which was lovely, but for the most part she'd arrive about 6:00 p.m., like she used to. It would be around 7:30 or 8. I advised her to take it easy every now and then, but we were both workaholics, so my words were unlikely to change. Much things changed dramatically. Around 2 weeks ago. It started with a message sent to me on LinkedIn, and I'm always ready to respond, because it's all about business. For me, the message was only a greeting, so I viewed the person's profile before responding. They worked for the same company as my wife did. The job was plainly junior, yet it was a lady, so let me simply mention that her name was Elena. I returned with a similar salutation, knowing she'd soon reveal what she wanted, but she didn't respond until the next day after work. Several hours later she asked if I was my wife's husband, and I replied that I was. At that moment I realized it had nothing to do with business, and my first assumption was that she was some pitiful chick attempting to poach a married man or something. I mean, I couldn't think of another reason why someone like her would message me and leave with that query. However, I answered in the positive. I really want to chat to you about something confidential, but I'm not sure if you're available. It is concerning your wife and was placed in a separate mail at this moment. I began to feel really apprehensive. I suspected that something was amiss with my wife or that she had been in an accident, but this communication had been sent since yesterday. Thus it was clearly something else. I began to question if my wife was too confrontational and dictatorial at work and so a bully to some extent. That was eventually what I decided on. She must want to report my wife to me, possibly before reporting to HR. So I told her I was willing to hear what she had to say. She suggested we meet in person at a neutral location, but I didn't feel comfortable with that, so I encouraged her to say whatever she wanted right here. I needed documented proof of everything she wanted to say. She appeared apprehensive, but eventually consented. She sent me a paragraph that was quite startling to read. Quote, "I'm not sure if you prefer ignorance or want to know, but I am positive that your wife is sleeping with some of the junior JAW staff. Maybe you have an arrangement, and if so, please excuse me for intruding, but I don't think it's right to keep you in the dark about this. I request that you do not mention my name if you decide to approach her. I understand that this could cost me my career, but I'm simply trying to do the right thing and I hope you appreciate it." End of quote. I have read that message around 5 times previously. What it was saying began to sink into my mind. She said that my wife was sleeping with junior co-workers. Was that something I could actually believe? I hadn't seen any evidence of that. She never seemed to smell like someone else's perfume. She never acted differently after returning from work. To be honest, the only thing I could point to was that she arrived later than usual, and that may certainly fit with this new notion. It took me quite some time to respond to her. I told her how pleased I was that she informed me and that her admission would be safe with me. About 10 minutes later, a slew of questions popped into my thoughts. What is the number of employees? When did this start? Did they do anything at work? How did she even learn about it? I asked her all of these questions in a single message. I don't know for sure, but I overheard at least 2 people talking about it. That is how I found out. Perhaps that was an inside joke, but they sounded serious and they worked late. I figured they were doing something inside the building, but I don't know what. I overheard their chat approximately 2 months ago and it's been bothering me. I noticed her whispering to one of these guys somewhere private, which brought it back to the forefront of my thoughts. I really had to say something, and I apologize for taking so long to report it to her directly. So I feel like a traitor. I don't hate or detest her, but it simply didn't feel right. End of quote. To be honest, I believe this lady, although I'm not sure why. Maybe because it seemed so unlikely that someone would go to such pains to deceive me. Could this be a workplace competitor attempting to harm her family life? I couldn't know, and I hadn't had the slightest question about my wife. Part of me didn't believe it, but for some reason it's amazing. I expressed my gratitude to the lady and informed her that I would act on the information as I saw fit, but she would be excluded. I wanted to tell my wife about it and see how she reacted or just confront her, but it would be so easy for her to deny. It seemed obvious that my best option was to see what I could dig up. That way I'd be able to either believe there was no evidence and dismiss what the lady told me, or I'd find something to back it up and then I'd proceed from there. So I decided to stay patient till I had a good opportunity to spy. When my wife returned home that night, everything was usual and I tried to be as natural as possible with her. It wasn't very difficult because I wasn't completely convinced. My opportunity to snoop around came about 4 days later when my wife went to the salon to have her hair done. She usually carried her laptop with her, but not this time. Her password is not a secret to me, so I was able to log in right away, and because she uses a MacBook, I was able to review her communications based on what this person had informed me. I was seeking for talks with young men who appeared to be her employees. I couldn't recognize any of the names, so I decided to read through as many of the notes as possible. I saw a mail preview that included text. "I will call you when I come back, so you do, and send a DoorDash." I could have laughed despite myself, so I opened it and began to browse through it all. Apparently she saved the contact, which belonged to a guy named JN, as DoorDash. To make things less suspect, if I just happened to see a message from him appear at that time, I was completely furious, and by the time they started exchanging hot texts, I had nearly lost my mind. He'd sent her photos. She hadn't sent him any, but she responded positively to his. I realized I had been staring blankly at the screen for a few minutes. To be honest, I can't convey how devastating it was to learn that I had opted to leave the chat, but I made sure to record as much proof as possible. After that I returned to the chat to keep browsing and seeking for more guys she was having relationships with. I won't bore you, but there were 2 other employees. I could tell they were employees, because work was referenced in about 5 of the messages, with the rest being explicit and based on their pictures. None of these men appeared to be older than 30. That was making things much worse in my brain. I gathered all of the proof I could find and I'm honestly at a loss for what to do next. Is it as simple as addressing her and then filing for divorce? Is that all I am going to do? This is a woman who comes home every day, kisses and hugs me and acts as if nothing is wrong. We've slept together several times since her affair began, and I know it's critical that I be tested. I intend to do so, but first I need to decide out what I want to do and get some feedback. Should I simply leave it at divorce, or should I beat her harder? Should I find a method to truly harm her, because this is the worst kind of treachery and I honestly can't stand her anymore. Edit. I just finished a tough day at work and I appreciate all of the advice and comments about my situation. Someone recently told me that I only have one chance to get revenge at her, because after I divorce her and put those years behind me, I won't be able to act on my pain. I know I won't be able to avoid feeling this way for long, so I'm ready to seize this opportunity. I'm not going to cheat back. I don't even have the desire to do that. I'll work something out and I'll keep you all updated. When your wife mentioned ascending the corporate ladder, it seemed that she took her job seriously. Who knew she was so dedicated to networking in more ways than one? On a serious note, however, discovering something like this must be like receiving a software update that wrecks your entire system. I suppose she wasn't simply debugging code at work. At the very least, you now have clear evidence that she has been multitasking, juggling spreadsheets and hot texts whether you had to address her. Perhaps you might ask whether this was her version of work-life balance gone horribly wrong, and hey, at least you found out now rather than being surprised later. Who knows, you might get a CEO vengeance promotion out of this. After all, Mom taught you the value of seizing opportunities, even if they are in the wrong department. Update. Hello everyone. I previously posted about my wife who was promoted and began cheating on me with her subordinate employees. I know of 3 of them. It's been several months since then and I forgot to keep you all updated amidst all of the drama in my life. But now that everything is over, trust me. It came to mind and I'm here to tell you how things turned out. It is all excellent news. So when I eventually decided to confront my wife about the situation, I made sure to get an STD test first. They discovered gonorrhea. Fortunately, I was asymptomatic and was given a medication to treat it. I was furious, though, because she's the only lady I've been with since we married, so I didn't acquire it from anybody else, and she probably got it from one of her new sexual partners. At that point I knew I was going to face her. When she returned home that night, I was in the living room and requested her to sit down before she could remove her outerwear. She appeared concerned, but I don't think she understood what was going on at the time. I know you have been cheating on me. That is exactly how I expressed it to her, and I watched her deflate and bury her face in her hands. I mentioned the names of the individuals she was cheating on me, at least with the ones I confirmed. I basically told her everything I knew, but I didn't explain how I found out one of your boyfriends infected you with gonorrhea, which you then spread to me. I recall putting up the test in front of her face and she took a quick glance before burying her face again. It was really getting on my nerves. I sat there waiting for her to say anything. She wasn't weeping and I knew she understood everything I said. It took almost 3 minutes for her to glance up, shake her head and say, "I apologize, I'm truly sorry." She claimed it would have worked if she had dented my dream car, but not for cheating on me. With many men. I do not. I do not even have an excuse. I cannot defend myself. I assumed you'd never find out. I'm not even sure how you found out right now. I despise myself for doing this to you. I'm so sorry. We began to shiver near the finish, but it meant little to me. I could see she was crying, but she wasn't wailing. It did not move me. You will not sleep here tonight. Find another location. I am going to look for a divorce lawyer first thing in the morning. I urge you do the same, so that we can get this done quickly. Only at that time did she say something that came near to begging, "Baby. We've been together almost 20 years, can't we?" Then she faded off. I believe she wanted to ask if we could work things out, but I believe she realized it wasn't conceivable, given how serious her crimes were. In response, I merely informed her that I'd wait in the living room while she packed anything she needed for the coming week. We had planned for her to retrieve some of her belongings. Later she stood up and walked to her bedroom after that, and that was all that came out of our chat, probably the most adult way to react to such a massive up. She eventually left the house and the next stage was the divorce. We both hired lawyers, the documents were served and signed quickly and we eventually began the proceedings. Fortunately for me, I had all of the evidence of her infidelity, including my acid test, and it was presented in a really effective manner by my divorce lawyer, who was an absolute rock star. Things took a long time, but they eventually worked out in my favor, because my ex-wife's elevation meant she began earning substantially more than I did, and I received a fairly generous alimony award. Even though I don't really need money, I'll use it to pay for 1 or 2 hobbies when the time comes. The house was difficult because we co-owned it, but her larger income meant she'd be in a better position to choose a new home. I also received that one. We both had automobiles and she obviously kept hers, but there was no easy way for me to acquire it from her. As things progressed, we eventually split for good, and I was quite pleased with what I received. I wasn't done, though I truly wanted to pursue her affair partners, but after careful consideration, I opted against it. These were employees and it was difficult to believe that they weren't coerced into it at first, no matter how much they appeared to like it. Later, she took advantage of them as their employer and I concluded it was too messy and not worth the effort to confront them. Regarding her, it was simple for me to file a report with HR at her company using an anonymous address. I had to inform them that one of their top executives was coercing junior colleagues into sleeping with her, and I urged that they conduct an investigation into what had occurred. Long story short, she was found guilty of the allegations, several junior employees right behind her were questioned, and there appeared to be a fourth individual whom I never learned about. The person who had initially revealed the affairs to me was providing insider updates, because all I had officially received was an email informing me that an investigation was underway and had been concluded her punishment. She lost her job. I know it won't be difficult for her to get a new job based on merit, but with sexual misconduct claims following her about she won't have it easy. As far as I know she is still searching up till now, and yeah, I understand that it jeopardizes my alimony, but I didn't need it to survive. Plus she has more than enough money in the bank to make her payments. Even if she doesn't, I don't mind going to court so she can figure it out. That is not my concern. We've probably spoken twice since the divorce and it was all about the formalities of permanently separating our lives. Personally, I don't want to talk to her ever again and the way things are going. I probably won't have to be honest. Life is quite fantastic right now, and while revenge does not totally alleviate the anguish of being cheated on by your longtime wife, it does an excellent job of. It feels fantastic and I'm glad I followed through on it. Not only did you catch someone red-handed with the junior squad, but you also received a surprise carrier delivery from her DoorDash service. I imagine in her new executive position she perfected the art of employee relations regarding her post-delivery job search. I assume her new skill set includes executive-level networking, though I doubt her LinkedIn endorsements will include expertise and workplace fraternization. Congrats for the HR report move. She may have lost her work, but at least she now has a fantastic recommendation for her future position. Excellent at climbing corporate ladders, not very good at keeping them straight seriously. It sounds like you've handled this with a combination of clarity and just the perfect amount of payback. Here's the hobby alimony and a life free of gonorrhea provide financial stability. Here is the next story. Nestled on historic Route 7, where 3 counties meet just outside of the city. The Falcon's Rest serves as a pub and grill known as The Rest. It is often frequented by police enforcement, making it an unusual location for a clandestine meeting, a suitable option for my needs. I parked in the busy lot and went inside. Compared to other cop bars, The Rest was well appointed, with a large bar area and plenty of tables. Despite the fact that it was a Friday and there were many customers, it wasn't too packed. Perfect for meeting Sergeant Devon Cross discreetly upon entering. The majority of the customers gave me angry looks as a lawyer suspected in the abduction of my cheating wife and her police lover. I was prepared for suspicion. There was no proof, no bodies, and the lover's automobile went away with them. However, I was already found guilty owing to my motive and career. Devon came clearly dissatisfied with my choice of site. He was a tall, strong black man who exemplified honor. He was here to pay a debt and rid himself of the shame of interacting with someone of my standing. I'll confess it, dear reader. I'm what they call bent a lawyer without a moral compass. I've been tied to multiple organized crime cases as an unindicted co-conspirator. Devon's financial situation deteriorated when he presented me with foreclosure documents. Devon. Then a Metropolitan Police officer fell victim to predatory lenders during the 2008 mortgage fraud crisis, along with his wife and 4 children. They were homeless. Despite seeking assistance from honest and partly honest lawyers, he found none until desperation drove him to me. I'm not sure why I assisted him. There was nothing in it for me. He was a decent, loyal cop, but not someone I could work with. He couldn't pay and was open about it. His remaining bucks were stolen by internet crooks. The foreclosure was scheduled for the next day. He sat in my office. A huge, powerful man broke down in tears as he spoke about his cancer-stricken daughter. He didn't know how to inform her or his sons. They were about to lose their house. I declared bankruptcy to block the transaction. Then I said some of my less reputable clients to approach the mortgage broker and extract a confession that the foreclosure filings were fraudulent. Surprisingly, the corrupt broker confessed when my associates offered him a greater bribe to the court. In short, justice which even Deutsche Bank will not pay for. Why had I gone to such lengths? I still can't say Devon cross-agonized, knowing that someone like me had saved his family's house. You chose an unusual location to meet. He marked. Even I own a conscience. I couldn't let you get into trouble for assisting me. I said, so you choose this location? He inquired. Is Luddy? The buried approached. She donned her regular outfit, a tight blouse that barely covered her stomach and slacks that appeared to be painted on despite her revealing dress. She was a beautiful girl who wasn't hesitant to show off her endowments. What can I buy for you, Bruce? She asked me. She and I had a history of flirty banter and substantial gratuities from me. She had a little son and no man at home. I could sense the stress in Ella's demeanor after she chose closeness, appeal over reliability. Everyone thought I was guilty. Therefore it must be true, and everybody connected to me would suffer. Nonetheless, Luddy chose to serve me herself rather than hand me off to another waitress. LTI was a fantastic buddy, and it turned out I had more friends like her than I anticipated. I did not want them to suffer for their loyalty to me. I needed to take action to regain my life and ensure people they could rely on me. Devon Cross was extending a lifeline in his own way, and I needed to take advantage of it. Bring us to the Boston Loggers, Luddy. I said. You have guts, counselor. Walking into a room full of Daniel Cruz's friends and co-workers. Devon declared Daniel Cruz was the man who seduced my wife, putting me in a difficult situation. He, his Ford GT, and my wife fled. On the night of March 7, St. Patrick's Day, thunderstorms inundated the 3 counties surrounding the program Harry Creek just before it aired. This body of water would be termed a river in the western states, but it was referred to here as a creek, a deceptive moniker that caused great pain. People misjudged the Shari, erecting bridges and communities around it, paying a high price in lives and property. On March 18, rescue crews were busy rescuing flood victims. Nobody realized. My wife and her lover were absent until a few days later when suspicion landed on me. As the adage goes, victory belongs to the brave. I told Devon, and we had a light conversation while he built up to the cause for his visit. I waited for 2 rounds of beers before saying, just tell me what you came here to say and I'll handle the rest. Believe me, no one will ever know. The tip came from you, so he leaned over and whispered, they have a warrant and we're going to raid your home and offices. Sunday 6:00 a.m. I pulled back my chair, stood up and let it fall before shouting. Listen, if I need guidance, I will not seek it from a city cop, and he is a better friend than you. I'm not sure what happened to my wife for the last time I stormed out, leaving Devon perplexed behind me. He was astute enough to understand that everyone would assume the worst about him. They'd assume he was an ambitious cop looking to advance himself through our connection. A confession from me would be in the cop's crown. Trying to get a confession from me would not harm him, but being spotted with me in a private rendezvous would destroy him. Doing it in public ensured that no one would think he had warned me. As I stepped out of the Falcon Rest, I sighed profoundly. I could only blame myself for allowing things to get to this awful state. I let my emotions take precedence over my rational thinking. Now I had to fight hard to get out from behind the 8-ball of justice in this country. Nonetheless, my late wife's diaries plagued me. Her words were like wasps stinging my heart until it bled. Elaine Gray's diary from October 1st, Mrs. Bruce Gray. I saw him again today. He's tall and attractive, with his wavy black hair. Jenny claims she knows him. In truth, she did sleep with him. He's a cop. Therefore he must be following me because of anything concerning Bruce. It's difficult to think that a seemingly uninteresting man like Bruce could generate such distrust in others, but I assume that comes with representing high-profile criminals. The individuals he deals with are far more interesting than poor Bruce. Don't get me wrong. I adore him. He resembles a cuddly teddy bear, the kind of man you can feel safe with. Why many believe he is dangerous. Jenny claims the police officer that is following me is a stud, which I will never understand. Very nicely endowed. His name is Daniel Cruz. Jenny has been seeing him off and on for the past 6 months. Her spouse, Bob, is almost identical to my Bruce, except he has a boring real estate practice and is not a black hat criminal defense attorney. You can't really blame Jenny for falling for the edgy cop. I mean, the temptation must be intense. After 7 years of marriage and 2 children, she says she's searching for some excitement. As for myself, after 15 years with a 14-year-old daughter, I'm ready for the rocking rocker on the back porch. Women like me just do not catch the attention of young men. It makes me feel so ancient. And October 15th, Bruce has gone on another trip. He appears to make more out-of-town excursions than anyone. I know. If it were anyone else, I'd suspect cheating. But he's as dependable as a devoted puppy, although not the most exciting. I started at the gym today. Jenny persuaded me to join. She's a big fitness fan and needed a workout buddy. I am not in poor shape, not like Bruce with his middle-age spread, but Jenny wanted company and I could use some toning as well. I increased my morning run from 1 to 2 miles, but I need to concentrate on my stomach and buttocks, feeling anxious about the empty nest. Perhaps becoming fit can help. Why did I let my 14-year-old convince me to send her to boarding school? Rachel is, just like my mother, all ambition, without much regard for others. My mother is still mocking my work decision, but I believe that assisting others is the most honorable pursuit. Social work can be unpleasant at times, but there is no greater pleasure than knowing you have made a difference in someone's life. However, Rachel may be attempting to remove herself from the stigma associated with Bruce's work. People say nasty things. Teenage girls are sensitive. Rachel's absence may be beneficial in the long run, but as a mother I can't stop missing her. I saw him again today. God. He is very attractive. He was in my gym. What a hunk. He wore a tight suit. You could see his carved abs, but I tried not to look at the bulge in his shorts. I can't believe this is all real. Why, I have no idea why he continues showing up around me, but Daniel Moreno is undoubtedly attractive. Daniel Moreno returned to the gym on October 17th today. He noticed me looking at him, but all he did was keep eye contact until I had to turn away. Jenny thinks he is interested in me, but I don't see why, unless it involves Bruce. When I arrived home, I did something I hadn't done in a while. I poured a glass of wine, pulled out my silver bullet and rested against the headboard. I let my mind roam, but it kept returning to Daniel, his powerful body and ample size. I tried not to think about him. It felt dishonest to Bruce. It was simply a harmless fantasy. I arrived quickly. There's nothing wrong with having an imagination, right? Today is November 2nd and I voted, not that it changes anything. As I was leaving the polling station, I met Daniel again. He did not try to hide. He hadn't followed me in a while, but he came back in the last few days. He truly greeted me, so I stopped and spoke with him. Are you following me again? I asked. Well, it's my job and my justification. He explained. Excuse, what would you say if I just followed you around? Why would you do that? Have you glanced in the mirror recently? Oh stop, I am a mother of a teenager. Have you heard of the term mill? No, what is that? It's what they call a lovely mom like you who seduces all the young men. Stop, I am not old. Unfortunately, I am a lady, not old, simply mature and sexy. Just then I recognized someone I knew and ended the chat. I couldn't believe he was flirting with me like that. Sure, I've dropped 5 pounds and toned up since joining the gym, but when a young guy shows interest in me, it pays to stick with it. Initially I was scared by seeing the fit young women, but getting a personal trainer and sticking to it is paid off. Bruce was obviously aware. He mailed me 24 roses when I questioned why. He just replied he felt like sending them to his lovely wife. What else can you say about a man like that? He means everything to me. I might flirt with a younger man, but I will never betray my devoted spouse, Jake, I said as soon as he answered the phone. Jesus, do you know what time it is? Counselor, I've been attempting to contact you since I was around 9 years old. I was on the job. Jake Trumbull responded. So I have a new job for you. Couldn't it wait? No, it is urgent. What is it? I require full blackout coverage at my home. I'll be in the office by sunrise on Sunday. What about this Sunday? Yes, this is Sunday. That is often a 72-hour work. You're giving me less than 24. Sorry, I just got word that I require it immediately. It will cost you how much? 35. Jake said, after all the business I'd sent your way. That is my special price. For anyone else it would be 50. Jake made no mention of how unlikely it was that I'd survive long enough to send him additional business. At this point, whether I was a business associate or not, I couldn't help but agree. He could have charged me any amount and I would have had to pay. Okay, get it done. I said November 9th. I've seen Daniel 3 times in the previous week. Now he always smiles and waves. Jenny had a full-blown affair with him. She swears he is the greatest she has ever had in bed. He's 29, 8 years younger than me. Jenny said he makes her feel as if it's her first time. There's nothing quite like the feeling Big Johnson gives you. When I asked her if he was worth losing her marriage for, she told me to wait until I had my first 9 inches Johnson. Can he really be that well endowed? Just thinking about him has made me all hot. Last night, when Bruce returned home, I jumped him. I suppose there are some benefits to having our daughter out of the house. Bruce performed admirably. He made love to me and gave me 3, but I'm embarrassed to say that I spent the entire time thinking about Daniel. Am I so twisted that I need to think about another man, as my spouse is making love to me? Today, as I sipped my mocha latte at Starbucks, Daniel approached and took my seat. He stared at me for a long time and I pretended not to notice, but eventually he broke the stillness. I've been reassigned. He explained what I'm no longer officially following you. What does this mean? Among other things, it implies my supervisors have decided that whatever crimes your husband is involved in, you are not a part of them, he said. Then he reached across the table, covered my hand with his and said, however, it also means that I can express my current feelings for you. I wish we could know each other better. You know I'm married. What is it? What does getting to know me better mean? He took my other hand in his and held them both lovingly. It suggests you are a gorgeous lady married to a man who is incapable of satisfying. You deserve to experience genuine love between a man and a woman. How about Jenny? I hear you and she are together. Jenny and I had a physical relationship. She is unsatisfied with her marriage, but I want something deeper plus. You can't believe any man would prefer Jenny over you. He replied with a smile. As I have stated, I am married. I have never cheated on my hubby. Can he say the same? You have seen my hubby. What are your thoughts? I believe we both realize you deserve better. With that I stood up, leaving the most of my latte untouched. I needed to leave. That man made me feel nervous. December 1st. I hadn't seen Daniel since our encounter at the coffee shop, and I was starting to worry, or maybe I'll be relieved that I might not see him again. Part of me regretted it. His attention boosted my ego, and I had to admit that my attraction for him was solely physical. I'd never been with anyone besides my hubby. I was curious to see what another man would be like, especially one so well endowed and competent. I was walking to my car at the DSS parking lot after work. I was running late because of papers. The lot was bright but vacant. As I approached my automobile, I felt like someone was watching me. I bent down to open the door, and he was right alongside me. I jumped back in fear. "Daniel, you terrify me half to death. Are you stalking me right now?" "Sorry." He muttered, his hand finding my waist beneath my coat, which had pulled open. "I just needed to see you. I think of you all the time." I should have been afraid, but the reality was he was constantly on my mind. I wanted to see him again. "Please," I pleaded, "leave me alone. I cannot do this to my hubby." Instead of listening, he leaned in and kissed me. He was tall, muscular, and masculine. He overpowered me, and in a cliché romantic moment I felt a spark in his kiss, some sort of bond formed between us. He said, "I need you more than any woman I've ever known. If it was up to me, I would leave you alone, but I can feel your body calling to me." I couldn't resist. I kissed him back, but then I shoved him away and jumped into my car, telling him I couldn't. I wish I could, but I cannot. They did not bother knocking for officers in assault gear. Instead, they picked the lock and barged into my residence at daybreak on Sunday morning. I believe they expected to find me sleeping, but I was in the kitchen preparing what tourist brochures call a full English breakfast. I had swapped kippers for lox and discovered kidney pie in a specialist shop. I was scrambling eggs in a large pan when the first police burst into the kitchen. "I hope you enjoy scrambled eggs," I said as he grabbed and dragged me out of the house. They detained me in a police van while they demolished my home. They did the obvious things like rip up the carpet and dig in the flower beds. I was fortunate. I had largely wooden floors. They pried up a few boards but left the most of the upper levels intact. They utterly wrecked the basement. My main problem was that they broke into my car trunk. It seemed superfluous, given I had left the keys in the ignition, but it appeared that devastation was their goal. Despite everything, they were not all horrible. After they finished trashing my house, a couple of officers I knew took me out to Denny's for lunch. "Where did you hide the bodies, Bruce?" They joked as I ate a disappointing huge breakfast off the menu. "So far as I know, there are no bodies. Come on. They disappeared in March. It is October now. Do you think it'll rain today? It's been extremely dry since the spring and summer storms. With my flower beds gone, I'll need to transplant my bulbs if I want to see flowers this spring. I feel for the people who are watching the show Harry Creek." I commented, recalling the deluge there. My Denny's buddies showed little care for flood victims or flowers. They were thinking about one thing: getting my confession despite the absence of evidence. The problem was that I knew things may change as rapidly as a flood. I wouldn't expect to see spring flowers if I were you, but helping us out might make things simpler for you. We know there had to be a legitimate cause for what transpired. Perhaps you just lost control. Stop being a lawyer for a moment and accept responsibility. We can help you." They pressed. "I do not think it will rain. After all of the rain, it appears that we will be experiencing a dry spell. I'll stop by Lois for some bulbs." "Okay, have it your way, lawyer," but a cop enters. "Get the chair to this date. Think about it carefully." December 9th. I had a rough day. The call arrived early. 5 children require protection is not my regular field, but this is our busiest time of year and we're short-staffed due to a severe flu season and holiday demands. It was difficult to manage 5 youngsters under the age of 7 in an emergency setting. They were all traumatized. They had just witnessed their mother being severely abused by the man they believed was their father. He was only biologically connected to 2 of them, but they still considered him their protector, and he had deceived them. I didn't want to split them apart or put them to a county facility for Christmas, but were there any other options? Around lunchtime I met a couple in their early 60s who had raised their own children and were still in outstanding physical condition. They had recently retired from state positions and were experiencing a sense of purposelessness. She had been a nurse and he was a highway engineer. By 400 we had temporarily placed the children and established assistance for the new foster parents. Feeling accomplished, I received a call from the State Department of Social Services expressing concern with the placement. It was usual bureaucratic folly to prioritize regulations over children's well-being. They were concerned that providing foster care to retirees would be perceived as double-dipping. We debated for an hour before raising the situation to the county executive and the state DSS commissioner, just when I thought the placement would fall through. Prospective foster parents contacted me. "When can we expect the children?" The woman inquired enthusiastically. "We're all set up here and my daughters are eager to help. The state is concerned about the foster care payments owing to your state pension." I mentioned that her response was loaded with frustration. "Tell the governor to keep his money. Please send us the youngsters." The county executive chuckled when he heard this. "Send the children over. We can deal with the state later." It took an additional 3 hours to settle the children into their new foster home. It was about 8:00 in the morning when I was able to leave and I didn't get home until around 9. I took a long hot shower and considered calling Bruce. Our calls can linger for hours, but he's usually preoccupied with demanding clientele. Tonight, however, I felt the urge to discuss my day with someone. I had just slipped on my robe and was ready to call Bruce. When the doorbell rang, I tightened my robe and responded, slowly keeping the chain fastened. There was Daniel looking as good as ever, but with a trace of remorse on his face. "Can I come inside?" he asked. "I do not think that is a good idea." I said, "I know your husband is out of town again. You are alone. I just want to come in and talk. Perhaps coffee and discussion." He insisted I cannot. I gave a forceful reply. "You can trust me." He said, "It is not about trusting you. It's about me." I said, "Please, just a few minutes." He insisted. I am not sure why I allowed him in, but I did. I made coffee and we sat on opposite ends of our enormous sectional couch. I adjusted my robe, attempting to feel more comfortable in its insufficient length for the situation. "Relax," he whispered reassuringly. "I am here as a buddy. I heard you had a tough day." "Yeah," I sighed and we began talking. It did relieve my stress. I convinced myself that there was nothing wrong with two acquaintances having a drink. We switched to wine and ate frozen pizza for dinner. It must have been close to midnight when he mentioned what he had truly come for. "Elaine, I will always be your friend, but I have strong sentiments for you, which I can only describe as love." I shifted uncomfortably. "Please allow me to clarify." He proceeded. "Your husband is currently in New York, meeting with organized criminal figures and an expert on avoiding surveillance. They intend to dodge federal wiretapping. These are bad guys and he's helping them stop. I will not hear this. It is not fair. Bruce is not here to defend himself. You loyal, but is it fair to you to stay with a man like me who got to know you and fell for you? I witnessed what a kind woman you are. Your life revolves around helping others. You are an angel with a devil as a husband, but I want you to know that no matter what happens, I am here for you." As we talked throughout the evening, we drew closer to the couch before I noticed it. His hands were below my robe and we were kissing. I knew it was wrong, but his touch felt warm on my skin and his lips met mine and I couldn't resist. His fingers slid beneath my skirt and swiftly detected my urgent erection. His touch felt quite pleasant as his fingers went inside of me. I let out a quiet groan. We both knew where this was going. It's like a runaway train without brakes. I felt powerless until the ringing phone jolted me back. It had been ringing for a while. Suddenly I recognized who it was, Bruce. I exclaimed, pushing back from Daniel. Bruce was on the telephone just checking in. He remarked casually. I apologize if I woke you up. I lost count of time. I gathered myself to respond and attempted to have a normal discussion. Bruce was chatty and went on and on. I could see Daniel on the couch growing increasingly irritated as Bruce spoke. Finally, Daniel offered me a rude smile before softly leaving. Bruce's call had prevented me from making an irreversible error in my marriage, but did I truly want to be saved? Daniel's touch lingered on my flesh, creating a fire I had never experienced before. The district attorney's conference room had a vintage appearance that had not updated in decades. Tawna Marshall, the daughter of a former state senator, owes her job to family connections, as does everyone else in this room. Like other assistant district attorneys, she was part of a system that persecuted the poor and vulnerable while criticizing the wealthy for paying great defense. Counsel. Where are your tools, Mr. Gray? She asked. We couldn't find it during our search of your home, my tool. I answered puzzled. The Smith & Wesson 0.44 Magnum is registered to you. Is it missing? You know it is. Sorry, this is new to me. It was located in the top drawer of my nightstand. Are you claiming it's gone? This would be easier if we could be open with each other. She pressed fine, but first could you tell me what evidence your officers allegedly found at my house? Then I'll respond to your queries when the moment is appropriate. I responded, rising from my seat in that situation. She responded by handing me a notification of my right to appear before the grand jury. This message was the actual purpose for our gathering. I had no intentions of going. The outcome was inevitable. I would be charged with 2 counts of murder. To be fair, the DA didn't have any other options. They'd broken into my wife's desk and taken her diary. They were well aware of her affairs. Tragic details, of course. Individuals like Tanya saw it as a tragic love story. My perspective was really different. It was a shame about the desk. It was a narrow drop front, an antique from the late colonial period. It had been in the dealer's window for almost a year. We were newly married and our daughter Rachel was just starting to walk. Elaine was pursuing her MSW in social work part-time. I was a newly graduated lawyer, not wealthy but madly in love with my wife, and I knew how much she wanted that desk. Every time we passed by the shop, she would pause to admire it. I saved every cash I could, but when I went to buy it for our anniversary, it was disappeared from the window. My heart sunk as I approached the store and inquired about the small desk in the display. The girl behind the desk was perplexed, but when she asked the manager, he claimed it had been relocated to the back of the store. Elaine was ecstatic when it arrived at our modest flat. Over the years I saw her at that desk and considered myself fortunate to have her as my wife. Love, I've realized, is about the small moments, the excitement over a modest antique desk, witnessing our daughter's first steps moving into our first home and seeing Elaine achieve her MSW. Love is made up of all of these moments combined. They aggressively opened the desk drawers and discovered the diary. Perhaps I could have left the drawers unlocked, but then they would have missed the diary's significance. Locking the drawers brought attention to them, making it easier to find the diary. Nonetheless, the desk's demolition caused me much pain. It pushed home the fact that Elaine was genuinely lost to me. The diary fulfilled its goal. Its contents quickly became public. Pressure rose on the DA, and with the proof in hand and the narrative of illicit love made public, the unfaithful spouse and her lover were transformed into a contemporary Romeo and Juliet. January 2nd. I don't know if I can accomplish it, can I? Jenny merely laughs at my hesitation. What is wrong with you? Your hubby is out of town. You can go to his flat and no one will know. It is that simple. How will I confront Bruce again? Regardless of what others say about him, he has always been good to me. What will I tell him if he finds out? Blame him for leaving you alone so frequently. He hasn't traveled much, and when we are together, so it's a good marriage. It's just that Daniel makes me feel things I never had before. As I previously stated, Bruce will remain unaware, and if he does simp, handle it as I did with Bob. What have you done? Remember when they came over here and he appeared upset? Yes, I remember him asking to lie down in the bedroom. He seemed almost ill. Well, when he found out I was seeing Daniel, I told him everything. I assured him that I still loved him and that he had no control over the situation, because Daniel had a way with women. I believe he wanted to confront Daniel physically, but he wouldn't have a chance. You're lucky he doesn't own a Magnum. I said I can't imagine Bruce handling it the way Bob did. I believe Bruce would respond differently, but Jenny claimed I was wrong. We discussed how much Bruce loved me and would understand just like Bob did. I have met Daniel around 6 times in the last 3 weeks. We were never alone, but I caught glimpses of him here and there. He might have been following me or Bruce. My hubby has been home and is quite attentive. We've made love almost every night since I'm so stimulated, but I can't lie to myself about it, even when I'm in bed with my hubby. I'm thinking of Daniel. Today. Daniel slipped me a note with an address, date and time. I'm quite sure this is his apartment address and it is for a date when Bruce will be in New York. I do not want to go yet. I know I will. I tell myself. I'm going to go ask him to quit harassing me. January 15th, oh God, what did I do? I spent the afternoon in Daniel's apartment. It started out fine. I stated that we could never be together. How I could not betray my hubby, but then he kissed me and my determination gone. He took me into his bedroom and gradually undressed me. My blouse came off first, then my skirt. He kissed me passionately, his hands caressing every inch of my skin. He unhooked my bra and allowed it to fall, exposing my vulnerability. While still kissing me, he knelt and kissed me through my exquisite lace panties. I believe wearing those costly panties signaled that I wasn't serious about not being close to him. He lifted me onto his bed and removed the remainder of my clothing. He kissed me all over his touch, sparking my flesh. This man wielded tremendous control over me. He undressed in a second, exposing his magnificent body. His powerful abs and big manhood stood out far more than anything my spouse had to give. I drew him closer, guiding him within where he filled me like never before. It just took a couple thrusts before I climaxed magnificently. He made intense love to me. His stamina was incredible and he recovered fast every time we spent the entire afternoon and evening together. Buried in passion, I peered several times and he did it inside of me at least 4 times. As I departed, tears flowed down my cheeks, knowing that it would never happen again. But deep down neither of us thought it was really over. As I went out his door, I knew I would return. Tanya's opening speech to the jury was a cut above her usual delivery, implying it was written by a talented writer. Her boss, D. Marks, sat behind her, making sure he shared the credit while avoiding the hard job. I represented myself in court. Judge Bascom, who presided over the proceedings, warned me that a lawyer who represents himself has a fool for a client. I argued that it was preferable than having a fool for a lawyer. Bascom seems motivated to ensure my conviction, bending over backwards to aid the prosecution and educating the jury in a way that bent the concept of reasonable doubt in favor of guilty until proven innocent. My major concern was that someone would realize I had a hidden advantage ready to be exploited, despite having the facts on my side. The prosecution built a convincing picture of a sad love story between a police officer and my social worker wife, with me positioned as the villain, despite my innocence. Life isn't fair and courtroom justice is frequently elusive. Sergeant McVeigh, did you open the trunk of the defendant's car? Tanya questioned the first witness. Yes, I was immediately wary of the automobile. It was an older brown Toyota Camry, not the type of car you'd expect a high-profile lawyer to drive, but it's discreet and has a large trunk. Sergeant McVeigh responded. Tanya said, turning to the jurors with a knowing smile. What did you find inside the trunk? Tanya inquired more. It appeared to have been recently cleaned, but we found hair and fibers that matched both Officer Daniel Moreno and Elaine Gray. Sergeant McVeigh responded. Could their bodies have been placed in the trunk? Tanya pressed objection. I added, Your Honor. This calls for speculation. The witness is qualified to provide an opinion overruled. Please proceed. Sergeant. Judge Bascom ruled, and so it went. Sergeant McVeigh eagerly told the jurors that he believed I had transported and disposed of the bodies of my wife and her lover. During cross-examination, I asked Sergeant whether the bodies were transferred in the Camry. What happened to Daniel Moreno's bright blue Ford Mustang Shelby 500 GT? I'm not sure what you're referring to. McVeigh said Daniel Moreno's vehicle. He has a snazzy sports vehicle. It is missing. I clarified yes, Daniel's automobile is missing. McVeigh admitted return to the Camry. You broke into it, but why didn't you turn the key in the ignition? I questioned we might not have seen them. McVeigh said but you already used those keys to unlock the trunk, didn't you? I pressed. McVeigh hesitated briefly caught off guard before responding. Tanya objected. The question is contentious and relies on assumptions rather than proof. The objection was sustained. Barring me from continuing with that line of questions, Tanya then called senior crime scene investigator Kim Yuen to the stand. He mentioned finding red traces underneath my basement carpet. Could you tell the blood type or DNA from it? Tanya asked seriously. No, it was overly deteriorated. There was a strong bleach odor in the basement, so I suspected there might be traces. Bleach is commonly used to remove stains. Investigator Yuen explained during my cross-examination. I asked the investigator if the basement featured a laundry facility, correct? Yes, he confirmed that bleach is expected in a washing area, wouldn't you? I inquired. I cannot say for certain. It is dependent on the individual's laundry habits and responses. The 7 female jurors didn't appear convinced by Ang's answers. It was time for the dramatic reading of my wife's diary to begin, the true highlight of the trial, January 16th. I am divided between remorse and joy. Thoughts about Daniel's great physique and how he made me feel consume me. However, I'm overcome with remorse over Bruce. I wish I could believe the negative things others say about him, but I know they are false. Bruce has always expressed his love for me and I have responded with the worst treachery. I have a feeling Bruce will notice my awful sin when he looks at me disclosing what I've done to us. Bruce gave me this desk as a gift when I was struggling financially. It's an authentic antique that I saw in a shop window but knew we couldn't buy. Part of our financial difficulties were my fault. I wished for a kid immediately after our marriage. Despite our dire circumstances, Bruce had just started his work while I was still in graduate school. Despite our hardship, I discontinued using birth control on my own. However, it should have been a shared decision. Bruce never complained. He was overjoyed with my pregnancy, but he was concerned about our finances and would have waited till we were more stable, even if we were struggling. He somehow found the money to purchase me a lavish gift, my beloved husband of 15 years, whom I have so easily betrayed. I'm caught between avoiding Daniel indefinitely and running to him gladly. When Bruce returns from his trip tonight, I'm sure he will notice something and perhaps that will end things in one way or another. I'm not sure what I'll say to him. I can't stand to hurt him. January 17th. Nothing occurred yesterday night. Bruce made no indication that he knew or suspected what I was up to. While he was away, however, our encounters felt strained, as if we had grown apart. I could be imagining the precise thing. I fear Bruce appeared fatigued and behaved differently. For the time being, I'll simply wait and see. I left the house early to avoid seeing Bruce in the glaring morning light. My cell phone rang shortly after I arrived at work. It was Daniel. He wanted to talk and we did until I had to start work. Talking to him improved my spirits and gave me optimism that things would work out. I had to confess that my feelings for Daniel were love, though not the eternal kind I have with Bruce. It is a deep and passionate feeling, unlike anything I have ever felt before January 19th. I took some time off and pretended. I was going for a lengthy lunch, but I ended up seeing Daniel at his flat. He's on the floor till the midnight shift. We had 2 beautiful hours together. I even tried to give him BJ, which I rarely do with Bruce. My husband's attention is generally focused on me, but I couldn't get enough of Daniel. I was so focused that I didn't notice when he ejaculated in my mouth. Bruce appeared distant at home, but I'm not sure if that was all in my thoughts. We haven't been close since he returned from New York, but he'll be home this weekend and I aim to make it up to him February 12th. I have been in turmoil for the past month. My relationship with Daniel appears to be deepening. We meet at his house at least twice a week during the day, and Daniel thinks Bruce is connected with hazardous people in the evenings, which has been happening more frequently lately. The FBI is concerned that their monitoring tactics are not functioning. Bruce is lawfully blocking their warrants and assisting them in obtaining advanced anti-bugging technology, which is ordinarily prohibited but can be obtained with special permits. Daniel didn't state it explicitly, but I know that part of his work still entails monitoring my husband. I suppose I should be grateful that Daniel almost always knows where my husband is, but the strain is increasing. I'm stuck between two lovers, both of whom I adore, but they are enemies. I feel stuck in this no-win situation with no way out. Bruce has been the embodiment of a good spouse, getting me small things for no reason, bringing flowers and making me feel so loved. However, I can't get the sensation that he is aware of what is going on behind him. He exhibits no signs of understanding. Yet after 15 years, I can tell when something bothers him. I'm sorry, Mr. Gray, but I don't see a problem with admitting your wife's journal as evidence. Judge Bascom stated in his chambers that we were debating the prosecution's motion to introduce Elaine's diary as evidence. I understand, so the concept of hearsay does not bother you at all? I asked. Elaine's diary was clearly an out-of-court statement offered for truth. Tanya contended that it is one of the exceptions to the hearsay rule. Which one exactly? I pressed a few. She responded loosely, not mentioning anything in specific. I knew I wouldn't win this argument. Tanya thought she needed the diary to assure my conviction, and the judge was willing to admit it. The diary will be allowed. If I'm mistaken, you can take it to the appeals court. The judge said on appeal. The pros. Yushin will most likely argue that admitting the diary was a minor mistake. However, this is not exactly accurate. But what did it matter? Everyone, even the judges on the appeals court, had already judged me guilty. Tanya had a pretty young clerk at her office. I read my wife's journal on the witness stand. The girl appeared to be around 22 years old, with straight dark hair and innocent brown eyes. She flushed delightfully at the more scandalous sections of Elaine's writing, which appeared to lessen any judgment the jury could have had about the affair with the lady I had loved and remained devoted to for 15 years. Rachel returned home for spring break on March 16th. I have not seen or heard from my daughter since Christmas. She appears quite happy. I'm not sure why she wanted to go boarding school, but I believe it had something to do with the stories about Bruce. She adores her father, but it must be difficult for a teenager to cope with what others say about him. With Rachel at home, Daniel and I can no longer meet at my apartment. Daniel believes that certain people at his workplace may have suspicions about our relationship. It could jeopardize his job if word of our romance spreads while he is on the team investigating Bruce. Daniel intends to request a transfer. He wants me to leave Bruce, but when faced with that decision, I know Daniel's idea is incorrect and what I've been doing with Daniel is incorrect. My affair is inappropriate on multiple levels. When I see Rachel, I remember above all that I am her mother and Bruce's wife. Neither of them deserves the grief they would experience if I ran away with Daniel. The sorrow I'd cause my family would far outweigh the pain I'd experienced from losing Daniel. I believe I am starting to see things clearly now. This desire that consumed me blurred my judgment. I need to clear my mind and do whatever is necessary to terminate things with Daniel. I am determined. When I see Daniel tomorrow, I'll call it off. I know he will be wounded, but he will go on. I know he will not be alone. Jenny is waiting in the wings. She's young and gorgeous and her husband has no choice but to allow her affair with Daniel. Bob is powerless against a man like Daniel. Everyone appears to think Bruce is a totally different type of man from the average. Will Bruce attack Daniel if he finds out? I do not believe Bruce would ever hurt me. But what if I am wrong? People say nasty things about Bruce. They cannot be true. I've known and loved him for all these years. Nonetheless, I have misgivings. Daniel believes my husband could be harmful and is concerned for my protection, but I can't get myself to believe Bruce would hurt anyone. When I look at Bruce, I see the kind and gentle man I married, the devoted father of our daughter throughout our marriage. Steve has always put Rachel and me first. When I see Daniel tomorrow, I must put an end to it. Will be difficult, but the correct thing to do. I phoned Jenny and advised she contact Daniel after tomorrow to soothe him. Tanya's lovely and youthful legal assistant completed the last item in my wife's diary. The prosecution intends to depict me as the wicked spouse attempting to break up the star-crossed lovers, but I did not understand Elaine's diary in that manner. Ultimately, my wife preferred her family to the man who sought her, Daniel Cruz. He knowingly sought Elaine, despite the fact that she was happily married. Perhaps he believed the nasty stories told about me by police. Perhaps he believed he could save the woman he had fallen in love with. The truth is that the lovers waited too long and tragedy struck them. In cases like this there are several. What would have happened if Elaine had confessed to me sooner, or if they had terminated it sooner? But it was not my primary concern. My priority was to save myself after the journal was read in court. Everyone knew the jury was about to convict. I had a huge list of witnesses, but just one was truly important. Jake Trumbull took the step stand on paper. My other witnesses appeared unremarkable. Jake's expert report was riddled with technical language and buried data, including a video referenced on page 439. We started with his credentials: an electrical engineering degree from RIT, a stint in Army intelligence and 20 years with the FBI. Not a horrible resume. I admitted that he worked for criminal organizations after leaving the government. His skill was critical in assisting myself and others to avoid government surveillance. Mr. Trumbull, have you ever worked for me before? Yes, multiple times. What is your most recent project for me? I installed a thorough surveillance system that monitored both your home and office inside and out. We call it a black cover, since it is intended to expose any illegal actions. What do you mean by dirty deeds? Typically, these include unauthorized entrances to plant bugs or evidence. Have you witnessed any similar activities? Yes, my team and I saw Sergeant McVeigh remove keys from a brown Camry and use them to open the trunk. He then placed things from a bag in the trunk. Later he returned with several officers and broke into the trunk with a crowbar. They continued to gather trace samples from inside the courtroom, eliciting shock and murmuring. Trumbull continued to exhibit the video footage he had obtained. We submitted this as evidence over the prosecution's objections. Trumbull revealed additional details about the blood planting discovered by Investigator 2. As a result, the prosecution's case came apart. They couldn't even prove the existence of a crime without forensic proof. All they had were missing people, a lost Magnum and a car that could not be found. My daughter Rachel hugged me firmly upon the decision of innocence. Her notion that I hadn't killed her mother was the most crucial thing for me. Many others believed I had gotten away with murder. Surprisingly, no action was taken against the police, who attempted to frame me in the end. Their efforts saved me by giving the prosecution a case to put to trial. During the long dry summer, the Harry River shrunk to a muddy trickle, revealing the blue Ford Mustang hidden in its depths. The bodies were still in the automobile. They must have been trapped within the car's frame when the floodwaters swept it away and subsequently submerged it in the swiftly flowing waves. Elaine's pocketbook was discovered alongside the GPS I had planted, as well as the remains of my wife. It turns that she had been correct. I had been more than suspicious. I had gathered evidence of her cheating. I genuinely adored her, and her betrayal tore me to the heart. In my opinion, Daniel Cruz was a scoundrel who had come to destroy a strong marriage. It bothers me immensely, but I was thinking of divorce, not murder. However, I knew that the police would never believe that my wife and her lover had died. Even if I was blameless, they would still hold me accountable. They didn't see me as innocent. Elaine was discovered below her partner, but both half-clad. It was revealed that they had been shot with Daniel Moreno, most likely the intended target, as the bullets traveled through him and into a lane. This sad double murder was the result of Smith & Wesson's ability to overcome the Mustang's defect. My tool had gone missing. If only the cops and prosecutors had waited, they would not have had to plant proof. The diary had forced their hands. It depicted lovers being torn apart by their harsh, deceitful lawyer spouse, causing the DA to act prematurely. The police were forced to resort to their standard tactics due to public pressure. I'd been framed, but skill and luck rescued me. As a lawyer, I was proud of my work. While law enforcement complained about how the system had been abused by a clever lawyer, Lottie smiled as she set down the beers and placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder at the chambers, the city's attorney's bar. She didn't have to say she was there for me. Her behavior demonstrated it. Lottie changed jobs out of loyalty. I followed her. Overall, the chambers provided a more comfortable environment for me to have a drink than the Falcon Rest. The cops would never forgive me for outmaneuvering them, but the customers here empathized with the underdog, the lawyer, with a soiled reputation. This perception was mistaken. The clients I needed to impress perceived my acquittal on a charge I appeared guilty of as proof of my legal abilities. Due to the unfavorable able press, I had to increase my hourly fee and hire a young female associate to handle the extra task. Surprisingly, rather than being tarnished, I came out as an unorthodox hero. Tanya, on the other hand, was driven out of the DA's office and blamed for the case's failure. My drinking friend gulped half of his Sam Adams in one gulp. "Relax, Bob, there's no need to haste," I quipped. "I don't have a wife at home and yours isn't worth going back to." Bob grimaced, as if he realized that certain ladies, no matter how attractive, aren't worth the hassle. "Jenny fell into that group and I'm sorry," he began, then trailed off. There was no need for an apology, I assured him, under the conditions. "None are expected, but I never intended to hurt Elaine," he begged. "Of course not. It was an accident." "Are you unfamiliar with tools? You couldn't have known the shots would pass through." Officer Moreno addressed the woman he was with. I argued, urged, and Bob continued exactly how he had the seat set up. They relaxed completely, like if they were in bed. You couldn't even tell who was below. I was very upset after Jenny promised to meet him again. "You were in a trance and not totally conscious of what you were doing. But did you check my magnum for prints before planting it?" I asked. I might have. I wasn't thinking clearly. I had snatched it earlier, aiming to scare him away. "It was your tool because I knew you had one in your bedroom for safety. Finding it was simple. You did not hide it. A guy like you probably requires that protection. Actually, it was a present from a client. I kept it in the bedroom for Elaine's safety while I was away." He nodded earnestly, and I wondered if he saw the absurdity of our predicament. She simply stated that she would meet him again. "Daniel will require some friendly comfort," she explained. I could not ignore it. I went to his house to inform him that I would not tolerate it. His automobile was gone on. I called home but got no answer. Afraid I jumped to conclusions. Under the circumstances, this was a reasonable mistake. I interjected. I knew where he drove his girlfriends in his nasty automobile. It had begun to rain and it was really dark. When I reached the county road that leads to the creek, I parked up the road and walked down to the creek on a clear night. The moon illuminated the countryside, but the weather was changing. They were on the passenger side, but the driver's window was partially down. I heard them laughing, and then she moaned in a way that struck me deeply. I did not think I just shot. Then the tool seemed to slide from my grasp, or perhaps I dropped it. I hadn't realized it was Elaine in the car till later. "I'm so sorry. Will you inform the cops right now?" he inquired, seeming concerned. I shrugged. "Why should I? It is not my place to judge you. I may be many things, but I'm not a hypocrite." "But I killed your wife." He said yes, but this was an accident. I'm not sure how the car ended up in the creek. I assumed it would be found right away. However, when it wasn't, people began accusing you. Naturally, but without corpses or tools, they couldn't prove my culpability. The GPS device I placed in my wife's purse told me where she was. I assumed the increasing water carried the automobile into the flooded creek. Then it sank. It was only a matter of time until the car bodies or both appeared, since my Magnum was stolen. I had a fair idea of how the lovers perished and who was to blame. I apologize for it, and how many people still consider you as guilty. You should turn me in. Bob replied gently. What shall I say? We have no influence over what people think, and I cannot debunk an enticing falsehood with an unpleasant truth. No, you are safe from me. I reassured him, so why did you ask me here? I've got something for you. I responded, withdrawing the document from my jacket pocket. What is this? He asked. My bill. Of course, I presented a powerful defense in the murder case, but you were defending yourselves. He emphasized whose fault was that I invested time and money into it, and the responsible party must bear the costs, and let me tell that I did an excellent job. You should feel satisfied. This is quite a large money, he remarked. I answered that was quite a defense. Do you accept American Express? Absolutely. I believe. Bob felt glad that I would not divulge his secret, but, as I already stated, it is not my business to judge. In today's environment, the assumption of innocence has been replaced with the assumption of guilt. In this cruel world, a man must rely on his wits. As Bob departed, he brought me another Boston Lager. Are you okay? She asked. Her voice conveyed genuine worry. Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode of the story, please give it a like, and don't forget to subscribe to get notifications for updates.